catchy name for this one.
Local legends call it Rodan, the fire demon.
People, LP 2000 right back at you with another video. Yes. Welcome back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Leslie Chambers Kaiju Reviews on behalf of Collect All Monsters. And I'm back again with another super cool X Plus figure review. It's been a few weeks since I've done a figure review because I've been busy, with life, work, Collect All Monsters, and other stuff. And the last video I did was of the X Plus 25cm Monster 92. Whoo, that figure's a cool figure. I'm looking at it right now, and it's a great figure. So we go from one cool flying figure, courtesy of X Plus, to another cool flying figure, courtesy of X Plus. So you already clicked the title. You know exactly who we're covering here. So let's dive headfirst into this super cool X Plus 25cm figure review. Today we're taking a look at the X Plus 25cm Ric Exclusive edition of the 2019 version of Rodan. Best of a super cool appearance in the epic legendary Monsterverse film, 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters. And yeah, this figure is so cool. It really is. It does have a few shortcomings, but we'll address that later on. But by and large, this is a cool release. It really is. So you know how we do things around here. Let's get up close and personal with the box before we get into the figure. Here's a picture of the long box, obviously because Rodan is somewhat of a long, at least wide figure, I should say. Here's a picture of the box. And again, box looks cool with the artwork. A picture of Rodan has like a little foggy mist going on with him, on the image of the box, 25cm in Japanese text, his name in Japanese text, the sticker signifying that this is a Ric Exclusive edition, and of course Godzilla 2, the title of the film, or how they refer to it overseas. So a cool box, that's it with the box. Nothing too extravagant, but it's a cool image display on the box. I will give it that. So let's go with the backstory with this figure. Now, the first time we've ever got confirmation that this figure was coming was back in August of last year, August 2020, at the Summer Kaiju Festival online event courtesy of X Plus. Actually, you know what? We kind of got confirmation of sorts when the 25cm Godzilla 2019 was released. And that figure came out, I want to say, October or September of 2020 last year. But the pre-order happened a few months or several months before that. So when they announced that they were doing a 25cm version, I want to say at the Winter Wonder Festival, yes, that figure was first showcased at the Winter Wonder Festival that year, 2020. And that was kind of confirmation of sorts that if they're going to do a 25cm version of the 2019 Godzilla, then you got to know that they're going to do the other monsters from the film, at least the big 3 out of the big 4 outside of Godzilla: Mothra, Rodan, and King Ghidorah. And we got our confirmation, like I said, at the Summer Kaiju Online Festival, courtesy of X Plus, where we saw an unpainted prototype of this figure of Rodan. And even though that show didn't rub people the right way. And if y'all remember what happened during that show or how things were advertised, you know, it wasn't the best in the world. But at least one of the bright spots coming out of that show was the announcement that they were doing a 25 centimeter version of the 2019 Rodan. And it came up for pre-order, I want to say April of this year, 2021, where we saw, you know, fully painted pictures of the figure and found out what the Ric feature is. Basically, Rodan, the standard comes with just the standard Rodan brown colors. And the Ric comes with the fiery magma, molten lava type of coloring on the outskirts of his wings and the tail end of his body. No different than what they did with the Death of Real 2019 Rodan. They just took the same Ric accessory from that figure and applied it to this one, you know. And it started getting to collectors' hands, I want to say September, first 2 weeks of September 2021. And that's how we got our hands on this figure. And I have to say, this has been one of the most anticipated figures of the year. And the reaction to it has been lukewarm at best. There's some people that love it. There's some people that have too many issues with it. It just depends on what side of the fence you land on. I land on the fence where I enjoy this figure, but I still acknowledge some of the issues that some people may have with it. Just because I don't share those issues doesn't mean that I have to ignore those issues, if that makes any sense. But by and large, I think this figure is great. It really is great. So that's it with the backstory with the figure, the box, and all that good stuff. So let's go into the figure. Yes, of course, this is the X Plus 25 centimeter 2019 version of Rodan. Now, before we go into the figure, let's talk about the stand. Because as you can see, he is in a flying position, which is great because the good majority of the film, Rodan is flying anyway. Now, he's not flying during the entirety of the film. There are times where he touches down on the ground, whether he's bowing to Godzilla or King Ghidorah, which I don't like. Oh man, I really don't like that. I mean, I love Rodan, and that's a part of the film. I enjoy his design in the film. I enjoy certain moments, but that's one of the few things I didn't really particularly care for. Him bowing to Godzilla or King Ghidorah. I have no problem him acknowledging, you know, said Alpha Titan, but he didn't have to bow. I think they should have done Rodan better in that, but that's another story for another time. Now, back to the stand. Sorry about that little rant. Now, back to the stand. You have to assemble it yourself, and it's really not hard to do, quite frankly. And the stand is really no different than the 30 centimeter fire Rodan stand that came with that figure, because that version of Rodan, courtesy of X Plus, is in a flying position, and so you have to assemble this stand, basically similar, like I said, to the fire Rodan. So you have to, you know, assemble the platform, put the poles, you know, in the platform, put this piece of plastic in between the poles to stabilize it, then put the cradles on top of the end of the poles. And what you do, you have to put Rodan on top of the cradles, but you have to do it at the most appropriate spot of the figure. Otherwise, it may come crashing down, and we don't want that. It may run a risk of breaking if it does fall down. But you have to assemble it and put it, like I said, under the appropriate spot of the figure. And let me just tell you, for those who may be hesitant about this, once again, I got the 30 centimeter fire Rodan, and that figure came out in 2018. Once again, similar stand, may not be the same exact stand, but it's still the same concept with the cradles and all that good stuff. And I have never had an issue with my fire Rodan coming down. I have never had a point where I've seen him falling off the cradles or him falling off the base, you know, whatever. So I really don't see that being an issue with this version of Rodan, or at least with this stand. So as long as you assemble it right and put the figure, like I said, on top of the cradles at the appropriate spot or in the appropriate spot, I think you'd be good to go. But I can understand how some people may have an issue with this stand. But as I mentioned in our most recent episode of Collect All Monsters, the reason why X Plus is doing this with Rodan and not doing a single solitary pole like they do with Mothra, right? It's the fact that Rodan here, he is not as big. His body, he's not as big and thick as Mothra, and his wings are not, even though they're wide, they're not big and massive and spacious like Mothra's wings. So the weight is better distributed with Mothra with that one pole because of the body being so thick and the wings being so massive. But with Rodan being a somewhat slimmer figure here, sleeker figure, with one pole, it may not be enough to stabilize his weight on top of the stand here. So that's why I think the cradles were added to this figure, as well as the 30 centimeter fire Rodan. But once again, once you assemble it right, you should have no issue with the stand. And that's all I have to say about that as far as the stand. Now let's go with the figure. the figure looks great, sculpted really well, you know, whatever. Once again, I love where we got these Rodans in a flying position, because we do have a few, at least a couple of them that are standing, you know, the 64, the 56, you know, whatever. But with the Fire Rodan, this one, I love Rodan when he's more so in a flying position, you know what I'm saying? And they've done a phenomenal job with the sculpt of this figure. I think the sculpt is really the main selling point of this figure, with his wings up like, you know, just up like he's about to flap, or he's about to dive into a building or a monster or the Argo or something like that. The sculpt of the wings, just the sculpt of the overall figure is great. The head sculpt looks great. Typical, you know, has basically the Rodan type of traits, you know, with the big giant horns in the back of his head. You know, the beak is really sharp a little bit. You know, the little teeth popping out. You know, the tongue, you know, is sculpted really well, colored really well. The eyes, that's the thing. That's another issue I've seen people have with this figure, that the eyes are really too small. And I can't argue with that. I can't defend that. The eyes are small on this figure. But to me, I don't think that's a bad thing, because the monster has small eyes in the film, so that doesn't really bother me, you know, whatever. And I like monsters where, you know, where they have eyes but they're kind of hidden, you know, like the '89 Godzilla, right? You can barely see his eyes, and that design of Godzilla looks awesome. The legendary Godzilla, his eyes are not too big, you know, but I think it complements the design of the monster, or at least the figure. And again, I understand some people may have an issue with that, but I really don't. But the eyes are small on this figure, but I think it still looks great. Just the attention to detail on the skin, you know, the every morsel of skin looks really, really good. You know, his chest looks really, really good. You know, that traditional Rodan type of chest, that plated chest, you know, it's really apparent here. It's not too outward, you know, like the past version of Rodan, but you can tell that, you know, that's what they were going for, kind of like homage, if you will, of the Showa version of Rodan, or at least a traditional version of Rodan with the spikes coming out of his chest. So that looks great. Like I said, it's kind of subtle here on this version of Rodan, but it still looks great. His feet, the claws on his feet look great. Good God Almighty! I just wish they would have added something else for this figure, like maybe a plane you can put in his feet here. Now, I don't think he grabbed the plane in the film. Maybe he did. I haven't seen the film in a while, but I don't think he did. I think he came close to grabbing one, or maybe he did. You know, maybe in the comment section, maybe you can hook me up with the information. But I wish they would have added like a plane to his feet, you know. But the feet looks great. You know, the claws, like I said, looks really sharp. It's colored really well. And this is, you know, that's great with the sculpt of the feet. The top of the figure looks great. You know, like I said, every attention detail to every skin morsel on his wings, on his body, it looks really good, you know. Now let's go with the Ric feature. Once again, the standard version of Rodan comes with the traditional brown colors, just brown all over the figure. But this figure, kind of like the Defo Real, Rodan 2019, it has the orange type of highlights going towards the outskirts of his wing, as well as his flap on the back of his body, or the tail end of his body, as well as his legs here. And even though I enjoy it, that's mainly the one issue I have with this figure, is I kind of wish that the orange highlights signifying the Ric feature of this figure should have been popped out a little bit more. It should have been more enhanced, because when you compare the Defo Real version of Rodan with this version, they did a better job with the Defo Real. You know what I'm saying? They did a better job with the colors on the Defo Real, with the magma colors, the fire colors on the outskirts of the wings of that figure. And it's really puzzling why they didn't really do the same thing here. And mind you, you know, we paid like an extra 30 or 40 bucks upcharge over the standard. But in my opinion, had I known it would have been a muted color like this, I probably would have went for the standard, you know. But I think there was a missed opportunity on X Plus part to make the colors pop out more on the Ric feature of this figure. And with the stand, even though I don't have an issue with the stand, but I think, once again, if you're charging an upcharge for a Ric feature, make it worth our while. That's my point. Maybe they could have included like a volcanic base or something. But the colors on the figure here, the Ric feature colors, I'm saying, they should have been enhanced a little bit more. That's the one issue I have with this figure. But other than that, I think this is a great figure. Once again, when you compare the Defo Real up against this one, the Defo Real kind of blows out the water with the Ric feature, you know. And I hate to say that, but You know, it is what it is. But by and large, this is a great figure. It really is. And even if you display Rodan alone, he does look great up against other figures that you'll see in size comparisons momentarily. But, you know, once again, this is a great figure, and it does have a mixed bag of reactions, and I can understand that, and I will address those in the final commentary portion of the video. But for me personally, I don't regret getting this piece. I'm glad I had this piece, and it's a good figure. It's not great, but it's a good figure. But I don't feel bad of my investment into this figure, if that makes any sense. So that's it with the sculpt, the paint job, the Ric feature paint job, the stand, you know, whatever. I think it's a cool release, and if you can find one for a good price, whether it's the standard or the Ric, I say go for it. I think you'll enjoy it, despite some of the issues that people or I may have with this figure. All right, so let's do a few size comparisons, and you know what? Let's go with the first size comparison. You know what? I do have a few other X Plus versions of Rodan in my collection. So let's bring them all together, at least a few of them together, and let's see how the big bird, courtesy of X Plus, has evolved over the years. So let's go with the first size comparison with a good chunk of the Rodans in my collection, along with the Man of the Hour, this guy right here. So let's do that right now. Okay, folks, here we are with the first size comparison, or I should say Rodan comparison. I bring up a few other X Plus Rodans figures that I have in my collection, and this is a great setup here. So in case you do have these figures in your collection, you can put them all together and have somewhat of an evolution of Rodan type of setup here, and it looks great. So let's go from left to right. We have the Devil Rare Rodan 2019, Ric Exclusive. Of course, the Man of the Hour behind him, the 25cm version. Next to him, we have the 25cm 64 Rodan. Next to him, we have the 30cm Fire Rodan from '93, and of course the last one, the granddaddy of them all, the 25cm 56 Rodan from his debut film. Once again, great setup here with the Rodans. Now, I do have a few more Rodans in my collection, but these are the principal ones that X Plus has done as far as like different incarnation of Rodan. You see what I'm saying? And as you can see here, he has gone through quite the evolution over the past, what, 55 years, something like that? Or 65 years, something like that. Yeah, 65, excuse me. But yeah, this is great. And as you can see here, he has gone from being just a straight up menace in his debut film in '56 to bringing the fight to Godzilla and King Ghidorah in '64 to being the half brother or whatever the heck that was in '93 with Fire Rodan, and now seeing him as one of the great titans of the Monsterverse. And I'm so glad that they brought back Rodan, because I'm a Rodan fan, you know. I mean, I love this monster, you know. So it was nice to see him brought back into Monsterverse design-wise. He looks great. How they handled him in the film is a totally different story. But the bottom line is, I'm glad that they brought Rodan back. And again, this is a great setup to see not only the awesome figures that the X Plus has made of this awesome monster, but again, you get the evolution of Rodan throughout the years, and that is so great. All right, so that's it with the first size comparison, or again, Rodan comparison in general. So let's go with one more size comparison. You know what? Let's bring up the monster that he bowed to, which I didn't like. Let's bring up the 25cm 2019 Godzilla. Let's bring up a couple other figures, and you'll see what I mean in the next size comparison. So let's go with the final size comparison right now. Okay, folks, here we are with the last size comparison. Yes, we got the 25cm 2019 Rodan, so might as well bring up the main star of the film. Of course, the 25cm 2019 Godzilla, the king of the monsters, the legendary Godzilla, and the legendary version of Rodan, both from X Plus, both from 2019. Both are Ric exclusive figures, and wow, this is a great setup. Now, mind you, I've only had Rodan for a couple of days at the time of this recording, and I haven't had a chance to really display him just yet. But this is actually the first time that I'm putting my 2019 Godzilla up against Rodan, and I love it. I love this setup. If Rodan does not look good enough on his own, he looks good paired. At least he looks better paired with other figures, and this is a great setup. Even though it's not really accurate to the film, because when you really think about it, Godzilla and Rodan barely had any interaction during the film. which is wild when you think about it, right? You know, I mean, of course, Godzilla and Rodan are in the film, but they barely come across each other until like the very end, after Godzilla defeats Ghidorah, and he is now, you know, the undisputed alpha of the Titans, and Rodan bows to him, which I don't like. Admittedly, I don't like. But it's nice to have this set up here. And you can position them however you want. And as you can see here with Rodan with the wings, as I mentioned earlier about the sculpt of the wings, his wings are really upward. So he's higher above Godzilla. So you can have Godzilla in the foreground, Rodan in the background like he's flying behind him. Or you can have them opposing each other because they're really like the same height head-wise. Both Godzilla and Rodan here. Even though Rodan is tall because of his wings. But head-wise, they're like face-to-face. So you can have them like in a head-on collision type of setup, you know, whatever. Whether they're enemies, whether they're allies, you know, whatever. This is great. This is a great setup between two of the big four from this film. Now, the only question is, who will be next? Will Martha be next? Will King Ghidorah be next from X+? Only time will tell. But for the most part, the first two are solids, in my opinion. When you pair them together, that's even better. So this is a great size comparison. But you know what? You know what? For all my nostalgic old school Showa fans out there, let me hit you off with this. Hold on one second. Look at that. Look at that. Ain't that awesome? For all my nostalgic Showa fans out there, we get the old school meets the new school. Yes, the old school version of Godzilla and Rodan from '64 with the 2019 powerful, awesome incarnations of those same monsters. Again, you can use this as a setup. This is great. This is so great seeing these four together. And just shows how far they have come. You know, from way back in the 50s when these monsters were first concepted. And now here we are almost 70 years later and they're still going strong today. I think the reinterpretations of both Godzilla and Rodan for the Monsterverse have been stellar designs. And they have replicated that X+ I'm talking about into these figures. So once again, you get a mixture of the old school meets the new school. And that's pretty much it with all the size comparisons I want to put with this Rodan for the time being. So let's go to my final commentary portion of the video with my final thoughts of the X+ 25cm Ric Exclusive edition of the 2019 version of Rodan. So let's go with that final commentary portion of the video right now. Okay, folks, I'm back with my final thoughts of the X+ 25cm Ric Exclusive edition of the 2019 version of Rodan. And I do enjoy this figure. And even though you probably have noticed that I haven't really been too overly enthusiastic about this figure, don't get me wrong, I enjoy having this figure. I don't regret my investment into it. But I guess it begs the question, because like I mentioned earlier in the video, this has been one of the most anticipated figures of this year. One of the most anticipated figures for a while now, quite frankly. Was this figure worth the wait? And honestly, yes and no. The yes part is, again, I don't really have any issues with this figure at all. Again, I don't regret my investment into it. I do enjoy having it. As you saw, he makes for some killer setups. But at the same time, I can't ignore some of the problems that this figure has had, especially from a lot of people's point of view. So let me address those issues, you know, more in depth. I kind of went through them a little bit. I kind of skimmed over them earlier. But let me just go through them one by one of the issues that I've seen other people have. And the one main issue that I personally have with this figure. First and foremost, the stand. Once again, I don't have a problem with the stand. Again, I think this was vital for this type of figure. The way this figure is slim in terms of his body or whatever. Again, he's not thick body-wise, or his wings are not massive and spacious-wise like Mothra. So I think that the stand was appropriate for this figure. And again, I don't have a problem with the Fire Rodan. And I've had that figure since, again, 2018, going on 3 years. 4 years come next year. And I haven't had a problem with that, with the stand. So again, as long as you assemble the stand appropriately and put Rodan on the correct spot, you shouldn't have an issue with it. But I can understand how some people may have an issue with this stand. And I'll say that, I'll say this, that the stand will be a problem if you allow it to be. No different than like tail stands. I know some people can't stand certain tail stands, even though they may be vital for a certain figure. But some people can't stand tail stands. I get that. But again, I think they're only an eyesore if you allow it to be. So the stand doesn't really bother me. All right. The eyes. Don't really have a problem with the eyes, even though I can understand that some people find the eyes to be really, really small in this figure. And you really have to look really hard to see his eyes, you know. But again, I don't have a problem with that. And to be perfectly honest with you, Rodan did have somewhat small eyes in the film, as I mentioned earlier. And again, I think the it's kind of hypocritical to jump on Rodan when the legendary Godzilla has small eyes. I'm just being real. But again, you know, it's only an eyesore, no pun intended, if you allow it to be, you know. And I don't really have an issue with the eyes being small, but again, to really look at them, you have to get up close and personal, like really up close and personal to see the eyes. But they're there. But I can understand that some people have an issue with its size. Another issue, they have the logo. You know, the legal jargon that they stamp on pretty much every single figure, you know, Toho, Legendary, all that good stuff. Well, some people have an issue with the placement where it is on this figure. And it's like under the underbelly of his left wing in a certain spot. And again, I can understand people having an issue with that. Again, I don't have an issue with this. Because if you look at Rodan, now the legal jargon, you know, it has to be stamped on every figure. You're right. You know, it has to have that logo on certain parts of the figure. With Godzilla, they probably normally do it underneath his foot or maybe underneath the base of his tail, where you can't really see it. You know, and honestly, with the way they did it with Rodan here, this was probably the best place they could do it, because they had to do it. You know, they couldn't really do it on his feet because they're too small. They couldn't do it on the top of his wing because that would be more apparent. I think where they placed it was the best appropriate spot considering the circumstances. So I'm not going to take X Plus to task for that, because they had to do it. They had to stamp the figure. So I don't really have an issue with that. And honestly, if you look at this figure from afar, you barely notice it. Only when you're up close and personal with it, kind of like the eyes, right, is when you notice that the stamp is there. But again, I'm not going to bash X Plus for that, because that was the best spot for it for the circumstances involved. So I don't really have an issue with that. Well, I understand people may have an issue with this. But the main issue that I have with this figure is really the Ric accessory, or the Ric feature. And again, the fact that the Devil Real Rodan 2019, the colors pop out more so and better on that figure, Ric feature-wise, than this one, is really a disappointment. And I kind of wish that X Plus didn't really phone this part in as far as the Ric feature. Again, I think what they should have done was have the colors pop out more, and they probably should have gave us a more elaborate base. Even though I don't have a problem with the stand, as I mentioned earlier, I think they could have gave us maybe a volcanic base, but at the same time, they kind of did that earlier this year with the Favorite Sculptors line 56 Rodan. So maybe they didn't want to redo or copy an already existing figure, Ric feature from a figure that's coming out in the same year. But at the same time, they copied the same feature that came with the Defo Reel. So I really don't see why they couldn't gave us a more elaborate base here. You see what I'm saying? But again, that's the only issue I have with this figure. But I don't regret getting it under any circumstances, you know. But at the same time, I can't really say that this figure should be in the running for Figure of the Year. I think all the issues that I told you about, including the issue that I have with this, kind of work against the figure. And in my opinion, I think the Defo Real Biollante is a better figure than this figure, and that figure has more of a place to be in the conversation of Figure of the Year than Rodan. And that's really unfortunate, because a lot of people were really anticipating this figure, and rightfully so. But not trying to say this figure is a total loss, because it's not. It's a good figure, but the fact that it's not great and the shortcomings that comes with the figure keep it from being great, it really is a disappointment. But at the same time, I think this figure is the best when it comes to having figure setups. Like, he's a great figure for setups. Like, he's like an enhancement figure. I think when you have the figure by itself solo, the problems are more apparent. But when you put this figure up against the 2019 Godzilla, or the Spiral Studios King Ghidorah, or another version of Rodan, you know what I'm saying? I think he looks great with other figures, and he makes for a killer setup. Like, his participation in the setup makes the setup even better. So I think that is this figure's main function. His best function is to serve as like a background player. I hate to say that. I don't want to knock it, you know what I'm saying? But I think it's best served as like, you know, as part of a setup versus being solo. But again, don't really have an issue with this figure aside from the Ric feature. But again, I think that X Plus should have done more. And as much of an upcharge that this was, you know, 30 or 40 bucks may not seem much in the grand scheme of things, but it's still a lot of money when we pay for this figure in upwards like $250. And when you tax on shipping, that's even more so than that. So to have a Ric feature that's kind of phoned in is really a disappointment. And X Plus better watch themselves. And this is coming from me, a huge X Plus supporter. We got more companies coming out the woodwork offering these awesome Monsterverse products. Now, we don't know if the Monsterverse films will continue, but obviously the Monsterverse collectible train ain't stopping anytime soon. So more companies are coming out the woodwork, offering these awesome Monsterverse products. And if X Plus is going to continue to phone stuff in, then that may drive figure collectors to take their business elsewhere. I don't want to see that happen. But maybe this should be a wake-up call for X Plus. You know, try to do a little bit better. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I do enjoy having this figure. I don't regret my investment into this figure, as I said a few times before. But again, you can't ignore the shortcomings, and that's pretty much unfortunate about that. But at the same time, I do recommend this figure, whether it's the Ric Boy or the standard, you know, because it's a cool in-scale figure of the 2019 version of Rodan. And again, once you pair it with other figures, you have some killer setups on your hands. And that alone makes this a worthwhile purchase. Yes, yes, yes. So that pretty much concludes my review of the X Plus 25cm 2019 version of Rodan, Ric Exclusive Edition, based on a super cool appearance in the super cool legendary Monsterverse film, Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019. If you have any questions, holler me down in the comment section. Hit me on Facebook via Leslie Chambers. We definitely go from there. Yes, once again, cool figure. And I'm sorry if I seem like I was bashing this figure during the final commentary portion of my video, but I have to be honest here. You know, I have to just state things from my point of view, from my perspective, and how I feel. I in no way am I bashing this figure or saying it's a horrible figure, it's a bad figure, I wish it never came out. None of that. It's a cool figure. It's a good figure, but the fact that it's not great, like I said, some of the shortcomings that are with this figure keep it from being great is disappointing. You know what I'm saying? But by no means is this a bad figure or a bad investment into this figure. You see what I'm saying? Again, I think this figure's strongest point or the strongest function is to be paired with other figures. And as you saw during the course of this video, he looks great up against Godzilla. He looks great up against the Spiral Studios King Ghidorah. He looks great up against other versions of Rodan. You know what I'm saying? He looks great up against other figures, and his participation will make a killer setup, you know? So if nothing else, it's worth the investment, you know, for that alone, you know what I'm saying? But again, I wish X Plus could have been more elaborate when it came to the Ric feature, you know what I'm saying? That's the only issue I have with this figure, but the stand, the logo stamp on his wing, you know, the eyes being small, while other people have an issue with that, I really don't. And I really am glad I have this figure in my collection. As far as like an in-scale version of the 2019 Rodan, especially an aerial version, you know, I think it shines in that department. And it's a cool figure. But again, I can't really see this figure being in the conversation for figure of the year. Again, I think the Death of Biollante is in that conversation. I think the Gigantic 54 is in that conversation. I think Megalon's in that conversation. I think Martha 92 is in that conversation. But unfortunately, I can't really say the same as far as Rodan. But that's just from my opinion. I'm sure some people may disagree with that, and that's fine. But still, it's a cool release nonetheless in this year of awesome releases from X Plus in 2021. So if you can find this one for a good price, whether it's the Ric Boy or the standard, I highly recommend it. So ladies and gentlemen, I give to you the X Plus 25cm Rodan 2019 Ric Exclusive Edition from X Plus. Go after it. You will not be disappointed. Trust me when I say that. So thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. And I will see you all again on this Figure Move review. All right. Y'all take it easy.